I discovered it all in one devastating moment. The betrayal that had been unfolding for months while I served my country thousands of miles away. My name is Cedric Vaughn, and I'm 35 years old. Each morning, I wake at 500, brew coffee in the kitchen that's finally just mine again, and step outside to watch the neighborhood come alive. Carissa, my wife, turned our marriage into content while I was deployed. Our home, my uniform, even the flag I'd been given before leaving transformed into backdrops for strangers who paid to watch. My stomach hollowed as I scrolled through images of my own living room, seeing the wedding blanket my mother had made us draped artfully behind her poses. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. I touched down stateside on a Thursday, my boots meeting American soil for the first time in 14 months. The drive from the airport to our suburban development felt like crossing into a dream. Everything familiar, but somehow different. Like someone had shifted all the furniture 2 inches to the left while I was gone. As I pulled into our driveway, the sunset cast long shadows across the pale blue siding I'd painted the weekend before shipping out. That memory hit me with unexpected force. Carissa laughing as I got a streak across my forehead, both of us hopeful about what was ahead. Simpler times. I killed the engine and sat there. The house looked exactly the same but felt completely different now that I knew what had been happening inside it. My key still worked. I pushed open the front door, duffel bag slung over my shoulder, and was immediately hit with the smell of vanilla candles and something else, an electronic heat I'd come to recognize from the videos. Ring lights, the kind that cast that perfect glow on skin meant to be seen. "Carissa," I called out, my voice sounding strange in my own ears. Too controlled, maybe. Too calm for what was burning inside me. There was a shuffling sound from down the hall. Then she appeared in the doorway of our spare room. What had once been my office, but in the background of her videos, I'd seen it transformed. White walls, soft lighting, a bed that wasn't ours. "Cedric." Her eyes widened, then narrowed, calculating. "You're early. Your text said tomorrow. Guess I wanted to surprise you." I set my bag down. "Like you surprised me." She crossed her arms, trying for casual but missing by miles. There was a nervousness there, a slight tremor in her hands. "What are you talking about?" "Say it," I told her. "I want to hear you say what you've been doing." She shifted her weight, that flinchy guilt behind her eyes hardening into something defensive. "You were gone, Cedric. Bills were due. I built something. You built it in my house, with my flag. In my uniform." Each word came out measured and exact. "It's just content." She shrugged, like we were discussing a hobby and not the demolition of everything we'd promised each other. "It's our life." She rolled her eyes, trying to make me the prude, the controlling husband who didn't understand modern entrepreneurship. "You don't get it." I finally felt seen. "You mean paid." We went round after round, the words getting louder and meaner until we were both breathing hard. The kitchen island stood between us like neutral territory in a war zone. "You left me alone," she snapped. "I left to serve. You turned our marriage into a subscription," I said. I placed my phone on the counter, screen up. "Take the site down." "No." The smirk that crossed her face was new, not the smile I'd fallen for years ago. "And you can't make me. It's my body, my business, my name, my uniform, my home." I tapped the counter. "Last chance." She stepped closer and hissed, "Grow up, Cedric. Men tip me to not be you." I felt the heat rise, then drop, like a switch had been flipped. The rage burned out, replaced by something colder and more focused. "We're done," I said, voice steady. "Pack what you own. Leave what you don't." Carissa's mouth opened, closed. She'd expected yelling, maybe some broken dishes. Not this quiet certainty. "You don't mean that," she said, but her voice wavered. "I've never meant anything more." I walked past her to the guest bedroom, ignoring her calls after me. I locked the door and sat on the edge of the bed. The springs creaked under my weight, a familiar sound in an increasingly unfamiliar home. That night, I microwaved leftover lasagna that had probably been in the fridge since before I'd shipped out. I ate it cold at the counter, not bothering to wait for it to heat properly. My appetite had vanished anyway. Sleep wouldn't come. I lay in that guest bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every word of our confrontation. Around 2 a.m., I got up and found a notebook in the desk drawer. I started writing bank account numbers, passwords, mortgage details, retirement accounts, every joint asset we had. I texted Ray, my buddy from the unit who'd been through his own divorce 3 years back. Need a good lawyer. ASAP. His response came immediately, like he'd been waiting. Dana Cho. Saved my ass. You okay? I didn't know how to answer that. Was I okay? Would I ever be again? Will be, I texted back. I returned to bed but still couldn't sleep. The ceiling had no answers for me, but in the dark, I whispered what felt like my first honest words in years. I'm done begging for honesty. The next morning, my eyes felt like sandpaper. I'd slept maybe 2 hours between planning and replaying every moment of the last 6 months in my head. Carissa had left early, for a shoot, she'd said casually, like she was heading to a normal job. I showered, put on the only clean button-down I had, and drove downtown. Dana Cho's office wasn't what I expected. No mahogany, no pretentious artwork, just a converted Victorian with practical furniture and walls painted the color of weak coffee. The waiting room had exactly 3 chairs and a receptionist who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Mr. Vaughn, he called, glancing up from his computer. Ms. Cho will see you now. Dana Cho stood as I entered her office. Mid-40s, Korean-American, with sharp features and calm eyes behind thin frame glasses. She didn't smile, didn't offer platitudes, just gestured to the chair across from her desk. Ray Donnelly speaks highly of you, she said, sitting back down. Says you saved his house, his retirement, and probably his sanity. She nodded once. I did my job. Tell me why you're here, Mr. Vaughn. Cedric, I said, and I'm here because while I was deployed, my wife started an OnlyFans account using our house as her studio. Sometimes she used my uniform, my deployment flag, things that matter to me. Dana's face didn't change, but she picked up a pen. Start from the beginning. How did you find out? I told her everything. The link from my unit buddy, the videos where Carissa posed with our wedding photo visible in the background, the way she'd labeled one video, Military Wife Home Alone. I described our confrontation, her defiance, my ultimatum. With each detail, Dana made neat notes in a legal pad. When I finished, she looked up. Here's what happens next. First, we document everything. The videos, the equipment she's purchased, any financial records you can access showing income from these activities. Second, you freeze joint cards but don't empty accounts. That would look vindictive to a judge. She might drain them first, I said. Then we'll have more evidence. Dana's voice was steady. Third, and most importantly, minimize confrontation. Don't argue, don't threaten, don't engage. Just observe and document. For how long? Until we file. 10 days, maybe 2 weeks. She leaned forward. Can you manage that? I thought about Carissa filming in our home, using my name, my service as a prop. Yes, I said finally. I can manage. Dana handed me her card with her cell number written on the back. Call anytime. And Cedric? Remember, she's already made her choices. Your job now is to protect yourself. That evening, I returned to a house that smelled of takeout and unfamiliar perfume. Carissa was in the bathroom. I moved quietly to the spare room, her studio. The ring light stood sentinel by the window, a laptop connected to an expensive camera, props arranged on shelves. I took photos with my phone, careful not to move anything. As I finished, I heard the bathroom door open. Through the cracked door of the studio, I saw Carissa walk past in a robe, her hair freshly styled. She went to our bedroom, former bedroom, and closed the door. Minutes later, the red recording light on her camera blinked to life, visible under the door. I texted the photos to Dana, then spent an hour hunting down bank statements and credit card bills. Carissa had created a separate email for payment notifications, but she'd used our shared computer. The password manager had saved everything. Days crawled by in tense silence. I slept in the guest room, left for work early, came home late. Carissa kept filming, kept ignoring me except for occasional barbs. Nice of you to visit. Or, don't worry about dinner, I've got my own money. Each night, I pretended to sleep while documenting more. Equipment purchases on our joint card, cash withdrawals that matched deposits to her new accounts, even a loan application with what looked like my forged signature. 6 days after meeting Dana, I woke to knocking. Heavy, official knocking. A deputy stood on our porch, holding paperwork. Cedric Vaughn? I nodded. This is a temporary restraining order. You need to vacate the premises immediately. He handed me the documents. You're allowed to collect essential personal items under my supervision. I scanned the papers, my stomach dropping. Carissa claimed I was controlling, unstable since returning from deployment, and monitoring her finances to prevent her independence. Where is she? I asked. The petitioner has relocated temporarily, the deputy said. You have 20 minutes to collect your things. I called Dana from the driveway, my hastily packed bag at my feet. She filed a TRO, I said when she answered. I'm locked out of my own house. Where are you now? Dana's voice was sharp. Standing in my driveway. She's not even here. Probably at her friend's place. Go to a hotel. Send me the TRO immediately. We'll fight this. She paused. Cedric, this is good news. How is this good news? Because desperate people make desperate moves. She's just shown her hand. That night, I sat on the balcony of a budget hotel, staring at the parking lot. My marriage had become a battleground, my home a fortress I couldn't enter. The stars looked distant and cold, just like they had in the desert. Only this time, the enemy wasn't outside the wire. She was the woman I'd once promised everything to. The courthouse downtown was all polished marble and hushed voices. I sat beside Dana on a hard wooden bench outside courtroom B, watching the minute hand crawl toward 9. My uniform pants and button-down felt restrictive after months in fatigues, but Dana had insisted on respectable civilian attire. Remember, she said quietly, let me do the talking. The judge needs to see stability, not emotion. I nodded, my throat dry. 3 days in a hotel room had left me with dark circles under my eyes and a constant low-grade headache. I kept thinking about Carissa in our house, probably filming in our bedroom, using my things. The courtroom doors opened at precisely 9. We filed in and took our places at the respondents' table. Dana arranged her notes with the precision of a card dealer. I stared at the polished wood grain, counting breaths. Then I heard the click of heels and caught a familiar scent, Carissa's perfume, the one I'd bought her last Christmas. My head jerked up despite myself. She walked in wearing a modest blue dress I'd never seen before, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Gone were the bright colors and flashy jewelry from her videos. This Carissa looked vulnerable, almost fragile. She didn't meet my eyes. All rise, called the bailiff. Judge Harmon was a gray-haired woman with reading glasses perched on her nose. She reviewed the paperwork before addressing us. This is an emergency hearing regarding a temporary restraining order. I'll hear from the petitioner first. Carissa's attorney, a slick guy in an expensive suit, guided her through rehearsed testimony. Her voice trembled just enough to sound frightened. After he returned from deployment, he became obsessed with controlling me, she said. He monitored all my finances, tried to cut off my access to our accounts. She dabbed at her eyes. When he found out I had started my own business while he was gone, he became angry, threatening. My stomach knotted as the lies flowed effortlessly from her lips. This wasn't just stretching the truth, this was wholesale fiction. I gripped the edge of the table, feeling Dana's hand press briefly against my arm in warning. He would follow me around the house, checking my phone, demanding passwords, Carissa continued. I was afraid to sleep. The judge looked at me over her glasses, her expression unreadable. I kept my face neutral, the way I'd learned during missions when the truth of a situation was different from what we'd been briefed. When it was our turn, Dana rose with quiet confidence. Your Honor, may I direct your attention to Exhibit A? She slid forward a folder. These are Mr. Vaughn's deployment orders and verification of his service dates overseas. You'll note that the alleged incidents of monitoring and threatening behavior on March 15th, April 2nd, and April 10th occurred while Mr. Vaughn was verifiably stationed in the Middle East. The judge flipped through the documents, her eyebrows rising slightly. Furthermore, Dana continued, the financial records show that Ms. Vaughn began emptying their joint accounts while Mr. Vaughn was deployed, transferring funds to personal accounts without his knowledge. She produced bank statements with highlighted transactions. There was no monitoring, because Mr. Vaughn only discovered these transfers upon his return 5 days ago. Dana methodically dismantled each claim, her voice never rising above conversational level. I watched Carissa's attorney shifting uncomfortably. Carissa herself stared at the table, the trembling act abandoned. After 20 minutes of deliberation, Judge Harmon returned with her ruling. The court finds insufficient evidence to maintain the temporary restraining order. She looked directly at Carissa. Furthermore, given the documented financial behaviors and Mr. Vaughn's clear legal interest in the marital home, I'm granting him exclusive use of the residence pending trial. Ms. Vaughn, you are hereby ordered to remove your personal effects by 5 p.m. today, and you are barred from commercial filming activities on the property. Relief washed through me like a cool wave. That afternoon, I changed the locks while Carissa packed her things under the watchful eye of a court officer. She moved silently, efficiently, focusing on her ring light and camera equipment. I stayed in the kitchen, drinking coffee that tasted better than any I'd had in months. Just as the officer was leaving, a car pulled up, a flashy BMW I didn't recognize. Nico, Carissa's self-proclaimed manager, stepped out. I'd never met him, but I'd seen him in the background of her videos. Slick black hair, too many rings, a smile that never reached his eyes. Carissa grabbed a tripod she'd left on the porch. "I just need to get the rest of my equipment," she called through the door. I opened it halfway, blocking the entrance with my body. "Your equipment is already packed," I said, my voice steady. "The court order is clear. No filming here." Carissa's expression hardened. "We're just getting my things." "Your things are packed. The cameras stay outside." Nico stepped forward. "Man, don't be jealous because she's found success without you." I ignored him, keeping my eyes on Carissa. "The order bars commercial filming activities on this property. That includes you, that includes him, that includes anyone you bring." "This is ridiculous," Carissa snapped, her victim act completely gone. "You can't control what I do forever." "I don't want to control what you do," I replied. "Subscribers can't vote in my house." I shut the door before she could answer and listened to their muffled argument on the porch before they finally drove away. Exhaling slowly, I walked to the kitchen table and sat down. The house felt enormous in its silence. No cameras, no ring lights, no performers playing roles for invisible audiences. Victory, I discovered, feels hollow when you once loved the person you had to outsmart. The house settled around me in the days that followed, creaking with familiar sounds I'd missed during deployment. I started a routine, up at 5, coffee by 5:15, and then methodical work on the list of repairs I'd been meaning to do before everything fell apart. The gutters had pulled away during winter storms. I climbed the ladder on a Tuesday morning, tools hanging from my belt like they used to overseas. My hands remembered the rhythm. Measure twice, drill once, secure the brackets. From up there, I could see into the neighbors' yards, normal lives unfolding. School buses, dog walks, arguments about garden hoses. "You eating enough?" Ray called from below, arriving unannounced with a bag of hardware supplies. "Getting by," I answered, hammering the last bracket into place. That evening I cooked a simple meal. Chicken, rice, green beans. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. I photographed the plate on the kitchen counter beside the day's newspaper. Dana had been clear. Document normalcy. Show the court a man rebuilding, not destroying. "Evidence matters," she'd said during our last meeting. "Not just of what was taken, but of what you're preserving." I sent her daily updates. Repairs completed, meals cooked, bills paid. She nodded approvingly when I showed her the folder system I'd created on my laptop. "I need more," Dana said 3 days later, tapping her pen against her legal pad. "Tax returns from the last 3 years, income statements, photos of any property damage from her filming setup." I remembered the holes drilled into the living room wall for mounting equipment, the scratched hardwood where ring lights had been dragged across the floor. "I've got all that." Dana's eyes narrowed. "And I want a complete accounting of her online presence. Is she still using images of your home?" That night, I reluctantly opened an incognito browser window. 3 clicks later, I found what Dana needed. Carissa was posting from a new apartment, but mixed in were older videos clearly filmed in our bedroom. Our wedding photo visible in the background, cropped just enough to remove my face. My phone pinged with a subscription notification. She was still using our joint email as a backup for her account. Heat rose in my chest, but I kept my breathing steady. 6 counts in, 6 counts out. The technique had saved me during firefights. It would serve me now. I forwarded the notification to Dana with a single line. Still using joint accounts for her business. The next morning, Ray showed up with Megan. Her accounting background had been his idea. "Dana needs financial evidence," Ray explained. "Megan's the best." Megan spread printouts across my dining table. Bank statements, credit card bills, tax documents. "Look for patterns," she instructed, sliding on her glasses. "Recurring transfers, large withdrawals, anything that doesn't match your spending habits." We worked for hours. Megan's finger traced down columns of numbers while I matched dates to deployments. By afternoon, the pattern emerged. Transfers to a Stripe account under CV Media LLC, a company I'd never heard of. She incorporated while you were deployed, Megan explained, circling dates in red. These transfers move money from your joint account to her business, then to a personal account only in her name. I stared at the numbers. That's my deployment pay. Megan nodded grimly. And your tax return, and part of your combat bonus. That evening became the first of many spent under yellow lamplight, sorting evidence into categories Dana had specified: financial misconduct, property misuse, identity exploitation. I labeled folders, scanned documents, and time-stamped photos. The work kept my mind focused, away from the hollowness that threatened when I thought too long about the woman I'd once planned to grow old with. Dana called on Thursday. Court dates set for next week. Preliminary hearing for asset protection and discovery. Will she be there? I asked. Count on it, Dana replied. And be prepared. When people feel cornered, they escalate. Has she tried contacting you? Not directly, I said. But she's still using my name online. Document everything, Dana reminded me, no matter how small. That night, I scrolled through my email and found a new notification. A subscriber-only video posted an hour earlier. Against my better judgment, I clicked. There was Carissa, smirking directly into the camera, wearing my old uniform jacket. The one I'd worn on my first tour. The one with my name tape still sewn above the pocket. Special content for my real supporters, she purred, fingers tracing the name sewn above the pocket. My name. I shut the laptop so hard the screen might have cracked. It didn't matter. The evidence was saved, forwarded to Dana, another nail in the coffin of what Carissa had built on lies. That's going to cost you, I muttered into the empty room, my voice steady where my hands weren't. Mediation day arrived with a gray drizzle that beaded on my windshield. I drove with the radio off, mentally rehearsing what Dana had prepared me to say and not say. Remember, she'd told me yesterday, mediation isn't about venting. It's about establishing positions before trial. Stay factual. The County Mediation Center occupied the third floor of a beige government building. I arrived 20 minutes early and found Dana waiting in the lobby, tablet in hand. Coffee? She asked, holding out a paper cup. I took it, grateful for something to hold. Thanks. Is she here yet? Dana shook her head. We'll be in room C. I've already uploaded our exhibits. At exactly 9, a mediator with short gray hair led us into a windowless conference room. 3 minutes later, Carissa arrived with a man in an ill-fitting suit who introduced himself as her attorney. No sign of Nico today. Seeing her hit differently than I expected. Not the gut punch of betrayal anymore, just the dull recognition of a stranger wearing familiar skin. She dyed her hair a shade darker, wore makeup that made her look older, and somehow harder. When our eyes met, hers flicked away first. The mediator explained the process in a practiced monotone. Voluntary resolution, confidential discussions, binding agreements if reached. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, making everything feel slightly unreal. Mrs. Vaughn, the mediator began, would you like to state your position first? Carissa tossed her hair back, a gesture I once found endearing. I built a business while my husband was deployed. I used my own creativity, my own body, my own time. Now he wants to punish me for being successful. She leaned forward. This is about control. He's embarrassed I make more than he does, and he's trying to tear down what I built. Her attorney nodded encouragingly. The content I create is empowerment, she continued. Women supporting themselves isn't something to be ashamed of. If Cedric has a problem with my career, that's his issue, not mine. I kept my face neutral, just as Dana had coached. Under the table, my hand tightened around my coffee cup. Dana waited for Carissa to finish, then spoke with the calm precision that had made me hire her. This case isn't about career choices. It's about legal violations. Mr. Vaughn has no issue with Ms. Vaughn's right to create content. His concern is her use of marital assets, his personal identity, and joint funds without consent. She tapped her tablet, and the screen on the wall lit up with a spreadsheet. During Mr. Vaughn's deployment, Ms. Vaughn transferred over $42,000 from their joint savings to a Stripe account registered to a LLC he had no knowledge of. These transfers coincide exactly with Mr. Vaughn's deployment pay deposits. Carissa's attorney shifted uncomfortably. Additionally, Dana continued, Ms. Vaughn used Mr. Vaughn's military uniform and insignia in commercial content, exposing him to potential disciplinary action. She filmed in their shared home, revealing identifying features that compromise his security. None of this constitutes empowerment. It's misappropriation and potential identity theft. That's ridiculous, Carissa snapped, her voice rising. It's just content. He's making it sound criminal. Forging signatures on loans is criminal, Dana replied evenly, pulling up the loan application, as is filing false tax returns that implicate a spouse. The mediator leaned forward. Ms. Vaughn, how do you respond to these financial allegations? Carissa's face flushed. I'll never give him a dime. I worked for that money. With his name, in his house, using his identity, Dana countered, scrolling through screenshots of the Stripe transactions tied directly to my deployment pay deposits. I watched Carissa's expression falter for the first time. A flash of something, not remorse, but recognition that her position wasn't as strong as she'd believed. The mediation continued for 3 more hours. Proposals were exchanged, each rejected. Carissa's attorney kept whispering in her ear, but she shook her head after each conference. When the mediator finally called time, nothing had been resolved. We would proceed to trial. In the parking garage, Dana handed me a folder. It went as expected. She's not ready to settle. What happens now? Now she'll fight dirtier, Dana said quietly. She's cornered. Change your passwords again. Document everything. Check your credit report daily. That evening I did exactly that. Changed passwords, checked door locks twice, scanned my credit report for new accounts. The house felt empty and too full at the same time, populated with memories I couldn't quite exercise. Just before midnight, something scraped against the front door. I froze, then moved carefully toward the noise. Nothing but an envelope on the welcome mat slid under the door. Inside was a printed letter addressed to friends and family of Carissa. It detailed my supposed controlling behavior, accusations of emotional abuse, claims that I had weaponized the legal system to silence her. Attached was a donation link for her legal defense fund. I held the paper, feeling its weight like something alive and venomous. She was rallying her audience against me, turning private pain into public performance. She's running out of truth, I whispered to the empty hallway. 2 weeks crawled by. I fell into a rhythm. Wake up, check emails, look for contracting work, meet with Dana or Megan, go home, repeat. The routine kept me sane while the case built. Then my phone exploded with notifications. You need to see this, read Ray's text, followed by a link. My stomach dropped as Nico's face filled my screen. He stood in what looked like an expensive apartment, hands spread wide like a preacher. This is a call for justice, he said, voice dripping with fake concern. My client Carissa is being persecuted by her controlling husband who can't handle her success. The video cut to photos of my uniform, the same one Carissa had used in her videos. Now it represented something sinister in Nico's telling. A military man trained in combat, using his connections to silence a woman's voice. Nico continued, we need your support. Share this video. Donate to her legal defense fund. Don't let the patriarchy win. I scrolled down. Thousands of comments, shares growing by the minute. My name, my face pulled from old Facebook photos, my uniform turned into props for their story. The hashtag #JockStandWithCarissa trended in our city. My phone rang. It was my contracting supervisor. Cedric, we've got a situation, he said, clearing his throat. Look, I know there's always 2 sides, but this publicity is causing problems with clients. We're going to suspend your assignments until this settles. These are lies, I said, voice tight. I have documentation. I believe you, he interrupted. But perception matters in this business. Call me when it's resolved. I hung up and stared at the wall. My income was gone. My reputation smeared. All because I refused to let Carissa continue exploiting me. The phone rang again. My mother's name appeared on the screen. Cedric? Her voice was thin with tears. Someone sent me this awful video. They're saying terrible things about you. Mom, none of it's true, I said, forcing calm into my voice. Carissa and her manager are trying to pressure me to drop the case. But they said you were abusive, that you're trying to control her body and her money. They're twisting everything, I explained. Remember when I told you she was filming in our house? Using my uniform? Taking money from our joint accounts? I could hear her breathing steady. I know you, son. You've never raised your hand to anyone who wasn't trying to hurt you first. We're handling this legally, Mom. Dana says we have a strong case. After reassuring her, I called Dana immediately. She'd already seen everything. Don't react publicly, she instructed, her voice a steady anchor. No social media posts, no rebuttals, nothing. Let the facts do it for us in court. They're destroying my reputation, I said, heat rising in my voice. My job? This is exactly what they want, Dana cut in. They're baiting you to lash out so they can say, see, he's unstable. Document everything, forward it all to me, then stay offline. I took a deep breath. Okay, meet me at the office tomorrow. Bring Megan. We're going to fine-comb every transaction again. The next day, Megan spread bank statements across Dana's conference table. Her accounting background made her methodical, highlighting patterns I might have missed. There, she said suddenly, pointing at a statement from 9 months ago. That signature isn't yours. I leaned closer. A loan approval for $8,000 in my name, dated while I was overseas. The signature was close to mine, but all wrong. The loop on the C too wide, the K missing its characteristic angle. She forged this, I said quietly. Dana took the paper, a grim smile forming. That's the nail in their coffin. Forgery is criminal. Identity theft carries penalties beyond our civil case. She made copies, added it to our evidence file, then outlined our next steps. The trial was 6 weeks away. That night, I couldn't sleep. The ceiling fan spun above me, stirring air but bringing no relief. At midnight, I laced up my running shoes and headed out. The neighborhood was silent and dark, streetlights casting pools of yellow every 50 feet. I walked a path I'd known since childhood, each step a silent vow. Past the park where I'd proposed, past the corner store where we'd bought ice cream on hot nights, past lives I no longer recognized. My rage simmered under careful composure. Not the wild, destructive kind, but something focused and patient, the kind that waits for its moment. At the end of my route, I stopped under a streetlight. Moths danced in the glow above me, drawn to something that could never warm them. You wanted an audience, Carissa, I whispered into the empty street. I'll give you one. In court. Trial day. The courtroom smelled like lemon cleaner and nervous sweat. I'd been up since dawn, pressing my one good suit and rehearsing answers with Dana in my head. She'd prepped me thoroughly. Speak only when addressed. Keep emotions level. Let the facts speak. All rise, the bailiff called. I stood as Judge Keller entered, a tall woman with steel gray hair and reading glasses that magnified her already watchful eyes. She gestured for everyone to be seated, then nodded at Dana. Your Honor, we're prepared to present evidence of financial misconduct, identity fraud, and intentional misappropriation of Mr. Vaughn's property and likeness for commercial gain, Dana began, her voice clear and unhurried. I sat ramrod straight at our table, feeling the wood press against my forearms. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, every cough and whisper magnified. Dana had arranged our exhibits in labeled folders. Bank statements in blue, photographs in red, loan documents in yellow, everything cataloged like ammunition. The back door swung open. Carissa entered with Nico trailing behind her. She'd chosen a modest blue dress that made her look younger, more vulnerable. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a simple style. Nico wore a button-down shirt with no tie, playing the part of the supportive friend rather than the manager who'd profited from our collapse. They slid into their seats at the defense table, whispering to each other. Carissa glanced my way, then quickly looked down at her hands. Nico smirked openly. My jaw tightened. I could taste metal at the back of my throat. Dana must have sensed it because she placed her hand briefly on my arm. Evidence, not emotion, she whispered. The judge called for opening statements. Dana rose and walked to the center of the courtroom. Your Honor, this case isn't about controlling anyone's choice of profession. It's about theft, of identity, of property, and of trust. While Mr. Vaughn was deployed overseas in service to his country, Ms. Vaughn systematically misappropriated their joint finances, used their marital home and Mr. Vaughn's military property without consent for commercial purposes, and even committed forgery to secure a loan in his name. The evidence will show a clear pattern of deception and financial malfeasance. The defense attorney stood next. He spoke about entrepreneurship and independence, painting Carissa as a woman who built a business while her husband was away. Each word twisted the truth into something unrecognizable. I gripped my pen so hard my knuckles went white. Dana's questioning began with our financial expert, who walked through the records of our joint accounts. With each statement, the picture became clearer. Systematic withdrawal of deployment pay, transfers to hidden accounts, purchases of recording equipment. Would you characterize these financial actions as standard practice in a marriage? Dana asked. No, the expert replied. This pattern suggests intentional concealment and diversion of marital assets. Next came the exhibits. Dana projected screenshots on the courtroom screen, images of my living room, my deployment flag visible in the background of Carissa's videos, frames showing my uniform jacket draped over a chair while she posed beside it, messages from her account advertising military wife content, with my name clearly visible on mail on the counter. I kept my eyes fixed on the evidence rather than Carissa's face. This wasn't about watching her squirm. It was about reclaiming what was mine. "Ms. Vaughn," Dana began, when Carissa took the stand for questioning, "who purchased the ring light used in your content creation?" Carissa fidgeted with her bracelet. "I did." "With which account?" "Our joint account." "The account labeled Cedric Deployment Pay in your banking app?" Carissa's eyes flickered. "Yes." "Who paid the mortgage during the months of April through September last year?" "Cedric's automatic payments from his military account." "And where were you filming your content during that time?" "In our house." "Did you have Mr. Vaughn's permission to use his uniform, his deployment flag, or his personal effects in your commercial videos?" "He was overseas. I couldn't exactly ask," Carissa snapped, a flash of the real her breaking through. Dana remained unflappable. "Did you attempt to ask through any communication method?" "No." "Did you inform him of your business activities at all?" "No." Dana approached with the loan document. "Is this your signature on Mr. Vaughn's loan application?" Carissa stared at the paper. "I don't remember." "Is this Mr. Vaughn's signature?" A long pause. "I might have signed it for him." "While he was deployed and unable to consent?" "We needed the money," she said defensively. The judge leaned forward, her gaze hardening. When the court called for a 15-minute recess, I felt lightheaded from holding myself so rigid. Ray, who had been sitting in the gallery, approached and squeezed my shoulder. "Almost over, brother," he said quietly. "She's digging her own grave up there." I nodded, unable to form words. The relief was starting to seep in, replacing the constant tension I'd carried for months. When we returned, Carissa was called back to the stand. The court clerk approached with the Bible. "Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God?" he intoned. Carissa hesitated, her hand hovering above the Bible. For the first time, I saw genuine fear flash across her face, the look of someone who suddenly realized lies wouldn't save her anymore. When court resumed, Carissa sat up straighter, smoothing her dress and tilting her head in that practiced way she used when trying to charm someone. I'd seen that look 1,000 times, at restaurants when the bill was wrong, at the DMV when forms were missing. It was the smile that said, "Rules are for other people." "Ms. Vaughn," Dana continued, her voice neutral but firm, "would you describe your online content as purely creative expression?" "Absolutely," Carissa answered, her voice warming with rehearsed sincerity. "It's creative freedom, artistic expression through digital media. I built a brand and a community." She glanced at the judge with a small, confiding smile. "Many military spouses struggle financially during deployments. I found a solution that worked for me." The judge's expression remained impassive. I kept my breathing steady, my hands folded on the table. Dana nodded as if considering this perspective. "I'd like to introduce Exhibit 27, Your Honor." She projected a series of private messages onto the screen, conversations between Carissa and Nico from her business account. My stomach tightened as I saw my name appear repeatedly in their exchanges. "Ms. Vaughn, is this a conversation between you and Mr. Alvarez from March 12th of last year?" Dana asked. Carissa squinted at the screen. "Yes." "Could you read the highlighted portion, please?" Carissa hesitated, then read flatly, "The uniform pics are getting twice the tips. These whales will pay anything for the military wife fantasy." A ripple of murmurs spread through the courtroom. I glanced at Nico, whose face had drained of color. He was staring at his shoes now. "And in this message," Dana continued, highlighting another section, "you wrote, 'Using Cedric's uniform for the whales tonight. They're obsessed with the dog tags.'" Dana paused. "Could you explain what you meant by whales in this context?" "It's just industry terminology," Carissa replied, her charm faltering. "It means high-paying subscribers." "So you were specifically using Mr. Vaughn's uniform, property of both Mr. Vaughn and technically the United States military, because it generated more income from these high-paying subscribers?" "I was being creative with what I had available," Carissa insisted, her voice rising slightly. Dana nodded, Then moved to the next exhibit. Screenshots of Carissa's subscription tiers, including one labeled Military Wife Experience, with my flag visible in the promotional image. Ms. Vaughn, this isn't creativity, it's fraud, Dana stated, turning to address the judge directly. It's the deliberate exploitation of Mr. Vaughn's identity, property, and military service for financial gain, without consent, during his deployment, and with active concealment. The closing arguments were brief. Carissa's attorney spoke about modern marriages and digital entrepreneurship, but his words sounded hollow against the evidence. Dana simply reiterated the facts: misappropriation of marital assets, identity theft, and fraudulent use of my name and property. When the verdict came, it was swift and clear. The judge spoke in a measured tone that left no room for interpretation. The court finds significant evidence of financial misconduct and misappropriation of marital assets. Mr. Vaughn is granted full ownership of the marital home and his vehicle. Ms. Vaughn is ordered to repay the $8,000 loan fraudulently obtained in Mr. Vaughn's name, plus interest and penalties. Additionally, Ms. Vaughn shall compensate Mr. Vaughn for 30% of all earnings derived from content featuring his name, likeness, uniform, or property. I exhaled slowly, feeling something unclench inside my chest. Ms. Vaughn's request for spousal support is denied with prejudice, the judge continued. Furthermore, a protective order is issued prohibiting Ms. Vaughn from using Mr. Vaughn's name, image, or property in any commercial content going forward. The gavel fell with finality. It was over. Outside the courthouse, several reporters had gathered. Someone had tipped them off about the military wife OnlyFans case. Microphones thrust toward me as questions overlapped. Mr. Vaughn, how do you feel about... What will you do with... Do you regret... I kept walking, eyes fixed on the parking lot. Dana walked beside me, a silent barrier between me and the cameras. The October air felt clean in my lungs, the first deep breath I'd taken in months. Across the parking lot, I saw Carissa standing next to Nico's car. Her makeup was smudged, her eyes hollow. Not performance tears this time, real ones. She took a step toward me, her mouth forming my name. I unlocked my truck, climbed in, and started the engine without looking back. As I pulled away, I caught a glimpse of the courthouse shrinking in my rearview mirror, growing smaller with every second, just like the power Carissa had held over me. The weeks after the courtroom victory settled around me like dust after a storm. Not choking dust, the kind that signals the air is finally clearing. I fell into a rhythm that didn't hurt anymore. Ray and I launched our security business officially on a Tuesday. Nothing fancy, just two guys with the right skills and tools, installing systems for people who wanted to feel safe in their homes. We focused on fellow vets at first. Something about explaining alarm triggers to men who'd been in combat zones felt right. They understood the value of knowing your perimeter was secure. We should get a proper sign made, Ray said one afternoon, measuring a window frame. Donnelly and Vaughn Security. Has a ring to it. I nodded, feeling something close to pride. Not just in the work, but in building something honest. Megan helped finalize my accounts, separating everything from the last traces of Carissa. She handed me a folder one Sunday afternoon, smiling gently. All done, she said. Clean slate, Cedric. I thanked her with a bottle of wine I knew she liked. It sat in my truck for 3 days before I remembered to give it to her. The little things still slipped sometimes, but less often than before. I mowed the lawn every Saturday, fixed the garage door where Carissa had posed countless times, the background of her videos now repainted and reinforced. I planted tomatoes that probably wouldn't survive, but I watered them anyway. The routine anchored me. Wake up, coffee, work, home, simple breaths between heartbeats. You'd be surprised how loud silence can feel after chaos. Sometimes I'd stand in my kitchen just listening to nothing, letting emptiness fill the space that once held arguments and lies. It was a Thursday evening in late November when I fired up the grill. The air had that clean fall bite, and I had a thick ribeye that had been marinating since morning. Stars were just starting to punch through the darkening sky when headlights swung into view on the street, slowed, then stopped near my driveway. I knew the car before the door opened. Some things leave marks on your memory you can't erase. Carissa stepped out, looking like a faded photograph of herself. Thinner, paler, her eyes hollow under the porch light. She wore a coat I didn't recognize, hugging herself against the chill. She approached slowly, stopping at the edge of the lawn. Can we talk? She asked, her voice soft enough that I almost didn't catch it over the sizzle of the meat. I flipped the steak before answering. We are. She took another step forward. I made mistakes, Cedric. Her voice cracked. We were broke. I panicked. You chose an audience over a husband, I said, the words coming easily now that they didn't hurt to say. And you lied to both. The night air carried the smell of cooking meat between us, a normal human smell that somehow made the moment more stark. I've lost everything, she whispered. The account got flagged after the court case. Subscribers demanded refunds. She swallowed hard. Nico's moved on to someone new. I watched her for a moment, feeling nothing but a distant sadness, not for what I'd lost, but for what she'd thrown away. She reached out suddenly, stepping toward me with that look she used to give me when she wanted forgiveness for small things, like forgetting to pay a bill or burning dinner. I stepped back. Don't touch me, Carissa, I said evenly. Leave the keys. She blinked, tears spilling now, the real kind, not the ones she'd practiced for her camera. Her hand went to her coat pocket, pulling out my spare house keys. She placed them on the corner of the grill table, the metal clinking softly. I didn't watch her walk away, just heard the car door close and the engine start. I turned the steak one last time, perfectly seared, and carried it inside to eat at my own table. The next morning I called my mother. She'd been worried since the trial, checking in more than usual. I'm fine, Mom, I told her, and meant it for the first time. Really fine. As for Carissa, I hear things through the grapevine. She moved into a cramped apartment on the other side of town. The platform flagged her old content, and the chargebacks ate whatever money she thought she'd kept. Nico found a new client barely a week later. The ring light got pawned for rent money. When she passes my street now, she doesn't slow down. People ask if I'm angry. I tell them anger burns out. Aim doesn't. I aimed at the truth, and it gave me back my life. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.